Hello, and welcome once again to Neurologic. I'm your host, Leo Jones. In celebration of Autism Acceptance Month, in this episode, we're discussing autistic women. More specifically, with them, regarding the disparity in diagnoses in comparison to males, masking or camouflaging their autistic traits, lopsided discrimination, and bigoted skepticism towards their diagnosis by many in modern society. Just how many autistic women are there, really? Is autism a disorder that majorly affects straight white men? Or have we been just that damn terrible with correctly diagnosing autistic women? Is it too much to ask of parents of autistic sons to stop trying to hook them up with an autistic woman they just met? Joining me to answer some of these questions is Elizabeth, an autistic woman who, in addition to being a visible activist, runs her own music therapy business, her primary clients being autistics. I had the fortunate opportunity to talk with her after a recent autism research conference. Tell us about yourself.
I'm 28 and I'm autistic and I like music and basketball.
And I know that you run your own music therapy business. Give me kind of a brief overview of what that is all about.
Well, music therapy is a profession, and it's kind of like being an occupational therapist or a speech therapist. You have to go through college and get a degree in it, and you have to do clinical coursework and be supervised and do an internship and then take board certification exams. So it's a very scientific, evidence-based approach to use music as a tool to work towards non-musical goals or therapeutic goals. So that might look like using music as a tool to help people gain more communication skills or more physical skills, just all kinds of stuff. So that's what music therapy is.
In regards to Autism Acceptance Month, most of the time during April, we don't see too many women featured, or at least if we do, it's usually just Temple Grandin. So I kind of want to start about your personal experience in regards to autism, specifically kind of when you were diagnosed and what that diagnosis was like.
I was diagnosed, I think, late elementary, early middle school, and I went to, here at KU, I went to the diagnostic clinic at the Center for Child Health and Development and there was a team there, and I was a kid, so my memories of it aren't quite like my memories today, but I remember my parents let me bring an algebra book because I like to carry that around and read through it, and they would ask me to the clinicians would ask me to do things, and then they would let me do my math when I was done, and I would show them my math, and I got to reread my report years later, and it says it showed that I was more communicative about the math, which was a good thing. So it was an interesting process. I wasn't quite sure why I was there. Nobody took the time to explain to me what was being done, that I was being evaluated for autism, that autism was a thing. So, it was just going to the doctor, but not a scary doctor, I think was how it was explained. No shots, I think. That's probably what they told me to get in the door, at least. So that's kind of what my experience was like. I mean, there were all kinds of tasks, but I was content because there were no shots and I got my algebra book.
So, when did you kind of find out? When was your diagnosis disclosed directly to you? Was it done by the doctor or your parents?
I don't remember anyone ever telling me, you have autism. I remember finding a paper. I accidentally clicked on something wrong on the computer. It wasn't my homework assignment, but it had my name on it, so I clicked on it, and it was some sort of letter from a school psychologist talking about the letters PDDNOS. So obviously I searched it and figured it out, and then a lot more things made sense. And not too long after that, when my parents found me reading more about that on the computer, they asked me why, and I said, well, I saw the letters on a paper. And they soon after that, they sent me to a camp called Camp Determination, which was a camp for kids on the spectrum, and that was fun.
So did they ever tell you, like, we would have told you or we're going to tell you at this point, or was there any plan for that to let you know, or?
I don't know, and I never really asked about it. It was just like well, I know now, so here's what we can do with that.
They're just like, okay, well, so we can mark that off the list. We don't have to tell her.
Yep.
She already knows. Good. Wow. All right. You have a very unique diagnosis story. Most people either have the like mine, which is the good story. It's like, okay, something to research from, or most of them get the doom and gloom. The parent gets told, your child is going to be a vegetable unless you do the following. So that's a very different one that you weren't actually told. You just found out through your own sort of stumble upon at that point. Some people will talk about autism as though it happens afterwards. Do you think you were ever autistic before your diagnosis?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I was the way I was since I was little. I can't say since birth because I don't remember being born, but as far as I can remember, I've always been the way I am. I mean, I've grown and matured a lot, and it didn't come at the same age as everyone else, but I feel like my thought processes are intact and they haven't fundamentally changed. So I was probably autistic before my parents knew what that meant, and I'm probably still autistic even though some people would say otherwise now.
Why do you think they would say otherwise?
I think a lot of it is I've gained a lot of communication skills that I didn't have at a younger age, or at least wasn't able to use. So, now that I can talk, I'm certainly not autistic. Joking.
Of course, because if you can talk, you're fine. No more support needs or anything else, of course.
But I think, being where I am in life, I've set up a lot of my days and routines so that I'm able to succeed and do what I need to do for me and also be a professional. And people see that and they see you succeed and they don't see that you still have challenges. So I think that's why some people would say, I don't know if she's autistic.
That actually brings up a very good point. This is something that I hear about a lot from autistics, especially among women, is that there's sort of a threshold that if you meet the criteria in people's minds, that they don't really consider you to be autistic. How has this affected the way you've had to operate your business? You've operated within the autism community itself. And by that, I mean you have the autistic community full of actual autistics, and then the autism community, which includes professionals, parents, anyone who rubs shoulders with those with autism.
I think I'm in a different place than most people because I'm autistic and but I went to college and majored in music therapy, and so I was constantly surrounded by the helping professional, and am considered the helping professional as well as being the self-advocate. So that's changed how I have to think about my language particularly, as well as my role in interacting with and supporting other people. Does that make sense?
I think so. I get what you mean. How often, though, do you usually hear things along the lines of, I don't know how often you're asked about autism per se. It just seems like a lot of people seem to think they kind of know you, and they've interacted with you, so they don't really talk about it a whole lot. But do you still get from time to time sort of the "you're not like my child," or we don't have your type of autism, those kinds of things? Do you get those very often?
Less in person, more when I'm communicating by email or over the phone. So I think, when you're with somebody, it's harder to say that to their face. I think that's how it works, at least for neurotypicals. They wouldn't say that right to me in front of me.
But they still kind of believe it. It's still implied.
I'm not sure. For sure, it's for some people, definitely. There's definitely people who are like, well, you don't really understand what things are like at my place because you can talk and you can say what you need and my kid can't. So, or, my kid has all these associated medical problems and you don't, when they're making an assumption about what they do or don't know about my medical conditions. That's another one that always gets me.
I could see what you mean. How often do you disclose your own personal medical needs or support needs to these people as a way to kind of connect with them, or do you do that at all?
I don't talk about my medical stuff. in terms of support needs, I try to say, listen, you get to see me in one location, and that's how I am in that location. But a lot of the times my ability to navigate the environment is determined by how I'm doing on the inside as well as what the external environment is like. And just because you see me being a great professional here doesn't mean I don't have challenges when I go to the grocery store on the weekend instead of waiting till there's no more people there.
Do you think that kind of specific bias affects a lot of girls and women with autism?
Yeah, I don't think people really think of girls or women as being autistic. It's mostly like, if it's somebody autistic, it's a guy, because there's more
straight white male.
Yeah, that's kind of what we see in the media, and the people who tend to be more famous. Temple Grandin's a girl, but
that's
Carrie
true.
Magro and whoever else.
In regards to that, do you think that inhibits autistic girls and women getting the assistance they need, getting the supports they need, maybe even biasing certain statistics, that are out there right now?
Yeah, I think it's harder to identify autism in girls. I think it gets identified later, right? You don't find out that you call it something else because, I don't know, a lot of people say girls tend to do better socially than guys on the spectrum, which I don't know. I mean, it depends on your social circles, right? You and me can have a conversation without ever looking at each other, which is kind of cool.
That's true. And the kind of why I find this funny is because we're in chairs that force you to kind of go look forward in this location. So I've kind of gone over another question I had here, which was how others have treated you if or when they find out you're autistic. It doesn't seem, as in a professional capacity, you have a whole lot of control over that disclosure, unless I'm incorrect on that.
No, you're exactly right. And it's one of the toughest things about being somebody who's willing to go speak as an autistic person, but also serve the community professionally in the same light. I don't get to decide who knows I'm on the spectrum, and that's something that's really confusing to me, because you're supposed to have that choice whether or not you disclose. And for me, the question is not really should I disclose, but do they already know? Did somebody tell them? And are they seeking me out because they want my professional services, or because they just want me to tell them advice about what I think, but not pay me? Because that happens.
Tell me more about that. I mean, that seems to be something that is that runs rampant. It's, I want this advice, or this, or can you help me here with this? Do you usually try to be very diplomatic with this and say, sure, I'll prep an invoice, or are you much more blunt about, I expect payment?
It depends on the situation. If it's somebody I have a professional relationship with, I'm more likely to, because I see them regularly, or their child or young adult, I'm more likely to sit down with them and just say, hey, let's problem solve here. But if it's somebody who's just expecting favor after favor after favor, hey, you did such a great job speaking to this group that I run, I'm planning to have you do it, every semester, because that literally happens, and they're not willing to pay.
Wow.
Yeah, so, stuff like that where they don't realize that the time it takes to prep, and then the idea of getting yourself there and taking not just the logistical time, but also the energy, the spoons, as you would have it. Absolutely,
yeah. So when you confront them about this, what's usually the reaction?
I've gotten some assistance from people I trust in terms of how to word email responses, so that they know that, I can send them a fee, but I need to know how long they want me to speak and where at, and a lot of times there's no response.
So they basically just cut you off because you're demanding to be paid for your work.
Yeah, or there'll be I'll get back to you on that, and that never comes. And there's some people, it's like every time I see them, I'm gonna get back to you on that, and I don't ask them about it because, why bother?
Well, you know the actual truth. Would it be easier if they said, I'm sorry, we can't afford, or we are not going to pay you for this? Would it be easier if they just were direct about it?
Oh yeah, I would much prefer that, because then I'd know one way or the other.
instead of just feeling like you're perpetually on hold.
Yes, perpetually on hold is a great way to describe that.
Yeah, to be quite honest, as an autistic, as an autistic professional, I've rarely gotten ever paid for speaking. Most of the time, it's some sort of intrinsic benefit. We will waive a registration fee, or, we'll buy you lunch, and it's a cold sack lunch of some sort. And so it kind of, I used to think, it's maybe because they just don't have the money for it. But then, as you brought them up, people like Carrie Magro and Temple Grandin, who are paid for their time to go speak, and it just kind of makes you question, where's the line where you feel we deserve to be paid?
Yeah, and it's hard because a lot of times the groups that I'm asked to speak to are groups of like young professionals, so teachers or people who are going to impact youth on the spectrum. And I have a lot of information I'd like to share with them. So it's a matter of me deciding, is it worth it to go donate this time once, and then maybe they'll pay me for it next time if I say, that was just a one-time thing? Or should I just say no? But, you want to hear a funny story.
Yes, I do.
I once had to drive just under an hour to go present, and I presented for free. It was a one-time thing, and I talked about it. I said, it's going to cost me time, and I'm going to have to give up workday and and rearrange my clients to come speak to your group. She's like, well, I don't really have a budget for that, but I could buy you a cookie.
Wow, a cookie.
A cookie for, 2 hours of travel and an hour of presenting.
That doesn't even pay for the gas.
No, it doesn't. Well aware.
It's like, slip me a $20 bill, and that would at least help. But an hour away, how long did you present for?
An hour.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow,
And if it was like a one-time thing, but it's so many people about so many things, it kind of wears on you, and you're like, can I do this work anymore? Is it making a difference or not?
Do you feel like sometimes do you feel like you make a dent sometimes, others you are hitting a wall?
I think it varies on the day how I feel about it.
I mean, do you feel that sometimes that you do make a tangible impact because you do have a business that you do run? It's a very unique one, because I don't know of anyone else that runs something like this.
Yeah, I definitely, when I think about the direct work I do with people I serve on a one-on-one basis, I know that I make an impact, and that's helpful, and that keeps me going more than the presenting. Although I like the small group presentations, 8 to 25 people. I feel like I can make a real impact there, and I routinely, I can present for 2 hours on strategies for helping young autistic people.
Well, I'd like to move on to something else that I know a little bit about, but I think is rarely discussed. And basically, we're talking about masking or camouflaging. There's been quite a few articles. I've talked with a few other people that said that they had to kind of camouflage and mask themselves as they were growing up. Have you ever felt like you've had to mask or camouflage who you really are just to kind of survive or move through something? Or when you're presenting, are there certain things you do to kind of cover up parts of yourself just to not exactly get along, but to be included, to be part of society, to adapt in that way?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, they thought I was an introvert, and I don't think I was purposefully masking anything, but the world was just so overwhelming. I didn't realize until college that I was an extrovert, and that I really do enjoy the social interactions. I just have to set them up so that they don't overwhelm me. As far as masking, I wouldn't use the word, but I think there are things I do on purpose to make sure people understand me or take me seriously. For example, in college, because there are times when my speech is pretty good. Like today, you can understand me without any problems. But there are times when I have a really hard time speaking coherently or speaking so that I'm articulating well, and people can hear that and think that I don't understand what they're saying, and then they'll start talking to me as if I'm much younger. This happens regularly. I was out with a friend a couple weeks ago. We were at the piano bar before it closed down, and somebody was talking to me, and she was like, do you get tired of that? And she's neurotypical. And I was like, you kind of get used to it sometimes, but yeah, you can.
So it's more of like an infantilization.
That's probably the right word for it. And I want to make sure in settings where I'm a professional or where I want to be especially taken seriously, like in college, when I took classes outside of my school, the School of Music, when I had to take other classes, I would make the decision not to speak to the professor. It would be a conscious decision. If I wanted to communicate with that professor, it was going to be an email. In person, it was just going to be writing. And the professor didn't, they knew I had an autism diagnosis because I had to get them to sign the papers for accommodations. So disclosure is not really an option that you get if you want accommodations. It's a must. And so they'd seen the papers. They knew I was autistic, but I knew if they heard me speak on a day when I wasn't doing well, they wouldn't take me seriously as a student. So I wouldn't talk to them at least halfway through the semester, at least until the midterms, and they saw that I could get good grades and I could write good papers.
So it sounds like you felt like you had to prove yourself to be coherent and intelligent.
Yes, that's something I feel.
And it seems to be backed up with your experiences that you've had, where people will judge you based upon that instead of actually waiting or taking in more information.
Yeah, it's really easy for people to make assumptions about one's ability to understand or take part in a situation, environment, learning, but they're not very good at presuming you're here for a reason. Yes, you can learn.
When it comes to disclosure, we've talked a little bit about you don't have much of a choice. Even so, how do you kind of handle disclosure among people that you're certain they don't know, that you just met and you're pretty sure they don't? How do you kind of handle that level of trust?
Professionally or personally?
Either.
Professionally, if it comes up, I'll mention it. If not, I'll just kind of wait unless they ask a question, because I'm not going to lie about it. I think that's silly. But it's not something, hey, just so you know, you're going to sign this contract so that I'll provide services. Just so you know, I'm autistic. It just doesn't make sense to put it in there. But there's other times it makes sense. Like when they ask, so why are you so interested in volunteering at this camp for youth on the spectrum? Well, let me tell you. Then it makes more sense. So I'll tell them. You want to hear a funny story, don't you?
I love funny stories.
Okay, so I was working with a young, a teenage boy. If he wasn't 13, he was probably real close. And his mom had gotten a recommendation for me from another city back when I had served a different city. And so I was like, yes, I recognize the name. I'm glad they gave you my number. Be happy to sit down and chat with you and your son and see if we'd be a good fit. And so then we were a good fit. And so we worked together for a while. And then son is also autistic. And so the son, as I'm leaving one day, says something about how I'm probably autistic too. And then the mom's face, she looks so horrified. Like, remember, and she says to him very directly, which I think is good, remember, we're not supposed to talk about that in front of her. We do think she might be autistic. Wow. But we should let her choose if she wants to tell us. Some people don't like talking about that. And I said, well, guess what? You're right, I am autistic, and it's okay to talk about it with me. I've got a lot in common with you, and I think that's cool. And that was great, and we actually were able to have a mentoring relationship for a while. So it worked out, but it was just really funny to see that mom's face and know that she was feeling highly uncomfortable while I was feeling so proud and pleased.
Well, it seems like it was handled in sort of a almost taboo fashion. Do you ever get told if you tell someone that you're autistic, did they ever say I'm sorry or kind of get an ashen look on their face?
Not anymore, because I usually say it with a smile and a thumbs up to tell them that it's not a bad thing and kind of encourage them it's okay. So
you non-verbally communicate. This is good. This is smile information, not frown information.
Yes, I kind of lead them on into that socially. Help set them up for success and not saying something stupid is the goal.
Speaking of saying something stupid, I know one of my friends who's also autistic and also a woman. Fancy that. One of the problems she deals with is frequently she will be approached by mothers or parents that are looking for a girlfriend for their autistic young man. Now, that happens to her quite a bit, and she finds it very annoying. Does this happen to you very much?
At times, less so by a parent approaching about their son, but a lot of times autistic guys wanting to date. So do you have a boyfriend, Elizabeth? I don't have a girlfriend. I mean, I literally had that conversation today.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets old. So yes, I experience a lot of that. Luckily, I'm autistic and I have no problem saying no, and I'm not interested in dating.
I mean, it seems extremely direct.
Yeah, it's the best way to be.
I was kind of wondering about that because this seems to be a common trait that, well, my autistic son needs an autistic girlfriend. How does that strike you?
Well, I don't know that one autistic person needs to date another. I mean, I think autistic people can date people who aren't autistic, and assuming otherwise limits a lot of people, right? I mean, it limits a lot of cool neurotypical people who might have an awesome autistic spouse,
Mm-hmm.
and vice versa. So I'm not a fan of that. I also think you really shouldn't go around soliciting somebody for a relationship if you're not the one that's going to be in the relationship with them. That's my take on it.
It's definitely a good point.
Because I do get a lot of friendship requests. I get parents say, I've got a son or a daughter. I've got a kid who's not a kid.
Right.
Who's probably around your age, which means within a decade, either way. Because And I think you guys have a lot in common and you would be great friends. I think I've had that conversation 3 times today.
Wow.
I mean, all the time. And I do like having friends, and I do like people making connections, but it doesn't feel like those are authentic friendships when they're based on, your mom wanted us to hang out because she thinks we'd be good friends, and, well, I guess you like sports, and I'm a Jayhawk fan, so maybe we could hang out, even though it's not basketball season.
And of course, since you both have autism, obviously that means you get along very well.
Yeah, and you definitely have everything in common because you're autistic. That's a joke.
Yeah. No, that seems to happen quite a bit. I've noticed, and I've actually had to say no to some parents, and it's not because I don't want to be friends with their kid. It's just like, I don't know your child. Do they want to be friends with me? Usually, I'm more of the aptitude of, not the aptitude. I'm more of the attitude that the person, if their child does want to be friends with me, they can approach me, they can email me. There's lots of ways to connect. If they want to be my friend, or at least start a friendship,
Yeah.
I would rather have them reach out, because if the parent reaches out, it seems like they're in control. And as you said, and you took the words right out of my mouth, that it doesn't feel genuine.
Yes.
And that's one thing that I just don't really tolerate. How often do you get approached by parents where they kind of want to get to know you as an autistic adult, and they kind of want to bring you into a circle to understand autism a little better?
More the past year or so, since I did stand-up comedy, from the perspective of making light of parents raising me as autistic.
The night with the rents.
Yes.
When you brought the house down.
I made the house fall.
Yes, you did. You did.
I
Everybody
don't know.
stood up, and the house and the roof fell in, and that was it. No more comedy for the night. It was very good. I was actually the most entertaining act of that night, and not just because you're autistic. It was you were very funny. It was very original.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, since then, the parents that I got to know through that process, because before me, everyone who got up and did stand-up comedy was a parent who has a kid on the spectrum. So, I think for me, it was kind of neat to make friends with parents, and not in a, I'm your provider, so we talk about your kid and that's it. But just as friends, and then for them, I think what they say is that they've enjoyed getting to know me as a person and broadening how they think about autism and life experiences. So I like that. It doesn't happen a lot, except for with that group. But I think it's wise.
What do you mean by that? By wise?
Well, think about it. If you hypothetically, if you're a parent, which I'm not, thank the Lord. You have a kid who's autistic, and they're gonna be an adult who's autistic. I would sure hope that by the time they're, halfway there to adulthood, some autistic adults, because you're gonna want them to have role models. You're gonna want to see what autism looks like in different kinds of adults. Plus you should know autistic people because we're awesome. Some of us.
Hey, well, we're just as diverse in personality and disposition. I'm glad to hear that those have lasted longer. For quite a few parents I've talked to, it usually seems we get along really well, have a couple of meetings, but either something I post on Facebook or something I may say that seems a bit radical.
Yes.
Which it just seems. I mean, I'm not demanding autistic, separation for my own, state somewhere in Antarctica. But it may be something along the lines of, no, I disagree with you on this or that or something else, and they get very, very sensitive about it, and I just don't hear from them again.
Right.
Have you ever had that kind of moment?
I met with a family once. It was a mom and a kid, and they just said they wanted to get to know local autistic adults because the kid's autistic, and I said, that's awesome, let's meet. And so we met at Fritz's, because what better place for autistic people to meet than a train place?
Oh, of course, obviously, yeah, because we all love trains.
Yes, we do.
Apparently so. Yeah, that was also a joke, I hope.
Yeah. Trains are loud, man.
I like the system of trains, but I'm not, anyway, you're at Fritz's.
I met with them, and it was fine, and I had some information, and I kind of told them a little bit about myself and learned about the kiddo, who really liked that train. And then I said, well, thanks for meeting us, thanks for lunch, because I think they got my lunch. But they were really cool with the fact that I ordered off the kids' menu, which I appreciated. And I don't think I've met with them again. I followed up a few times to say, how's the kiddo doing? And I got their address, and I sent them a little card, and I drew trains on it. But yeah, I haven't gotten anything since then. So it's I'm not sure there's the commitment there from people who don't really know you from some other way. The intentions are good, I just don't know that it gets carried out.
It just seems like a lot of the good intentions just kind of fall away, and yeah, and without them saying, hey, I'm very busy, or I'm just tired, or I just don't have to, I can't deal with this right now.
Yeah.
At least something more direct. I have another question here. How do you think autistic women are viewed in society?
I think they're invisible. They're not viewed. Except Temple Grandin.
Well, of course. She doesn't have the invisibility cloak. So, and when you talk about invisible, I mean, obviously we're not talking about the superpower, but where are we heading with that in regards to
my
women
thought
with
is,
autism?
you don't look at it, you never look at a woman and think, oh, she might be autistic, right? You see a woman acting in a less than traditional fashion, and you make some different kinds of assumptions about her, and by you, I don't mean you.
Oh, I'm not, no, I know.
So, more often you'll see somebody labeled with just not nice words, or as crazy, which, don't get me started on why we shouldn't just say that.
That is knocked around way too much.
Yeah. So I think people tend to, it's just more males with autism are famous than women. And that's, I can't think of anyone besides Temple Grandin where I say their name and neurotypical parents would know who I'm talking about.
Because I right now off the top of my head, I can actually name, autistic women that should be at least famous. I mean,
oh yeah,
Autistic Hoya, Lydia, XC Brown, Amy Sequenzia,
Ashkenazi.
Yeah. Quite a few. It's like there's a lot of them out there. The problem is they're not getting the exposure, because I'm not sure what led Temple to be so famous. Do you think that the societal views of autism as being primarily a straight white male thing up until very recently, I mean, the past 10 years. Do you think that contributed to the lack of visibility for autistic women, or do you think is the way that autistic women are viewed in society the cause of a lack of visibility, or is it also due to more of the lack of proper diagnostic tools to properly diagnose autistic women?
I think it's a mix of not having the tools, not having clinicians trained in how autism looks different in females. I think another big thing is that people look at autistic women and say, well, that's not like my kid. That's where I see that more than with the guys, based on the people I talk to. Yeah.
Could you go into more depth about that? I mean, I haven't really, because I'm a straight white male, it's assumed like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I don't usually get too many, aside from being told, oh, well, you dress so well, or you live on your own. You know, these incredibly low bars that I'm supposed to...
Oh my gosh, I get those too.
Yeah, oh yeah, well, you got it today too. Yeah, I was very disappointed. And it's like, I am an adult. I can do these things. I pay my taxes. I follow through on bills. But that doesn't mean my struggles are gone. It just means that I've been able to adapt.
Yes.
So tell me more about that, because yeah, you get those too.
Well, because I'm not a dude, I hear less about, oh, you're not like my kid because you're a dude. But I hear that when, I've sent somebody a link, oh, this reminds me of something that Amy, not Sequenza, the other Amy. Not Amy. Amethyst?
Amethyst Shaber or...
Probably that.
Carly...
Not Carly.
Okay.
But anyway, there's a video of a woman, and she explains a lot of great things really well. And she has her videos on YouTube, and so I'll send somebody that. And then they're like, well, that's not like my kid, so it's not valid. I don't know why.
No, I'm really kind of shocked by it, because I'm not really shocked by it. I'm not surprised, because I hear that kind of stuff all the time. It's as though there is a lack of understanding of how we adapt to society and societal norms and mores and taboos and such.
I think there's people forget that the people they see on YouTube explaining things, people like you and me, actually did used to be kids. Just because I am at 28 finally able to speak in sentences without the words right in front of me all the time doesn't mean that at 12 I wasn't really having a hard time and had accommodations so I didn't have to do any presentations in school. Like, they just don't know that, and they make assumptions based on what they see today about what things look like a decade, 2 decades ago.
Do you think if you showed them that, if there was some sort of video or something, do you think their assumptions would change, or would they only apply that change of assumption directly to you in that specific circumstance?
I think directly to me, but then I think if I show them, because I'm lucky enough, I have footage of me in high school that somebody put on YouTube without my permission. Anyways, it ended up being something I can say, hey, look, this is me in high school, and this is me today. And I think they immediately switch into inspiration porn.
Yeah.
Which is never my goal, and it makes me feel uncomfortable.
You handle it very well, from what I've seen, just from my own observation. I have increasingly had a harder time over the years with it, because it seems like it just built up, or I'm tired of hearing those things, and I actually take it as an insult that oh, you're well dressed, and you seem like you have all of your stuff together, and I'm sitting in my head going, I don't really. I am one small disaster away from a lot of things kind of falling apart here, but I've learned to cope, and it's kind of mildly insulting because it's a blatant disregard of any deficits or issues I have. When it comes to those, I mean, do you ever feel uncomfortable talking about those with someone?
Talking about those,
like if you say to someone, well, I do have these issues, these when I run out of spoons, these things happen. I have to deal with these things as a part of me being an autistic woman.
People don't want to hear about it. So if it's going to get talked about, it's me bringing up saying, you can't just say that I got better because I have a job. You have to realize that I have my own job that I've created because the typical workplace doesn't work for me. And even though I design things so that things hopefully run smoothly most of the time, things don't always go well. And when that happens, I'm not able to be the professional you know.
And then you run smack dab into the issue you had in regards to not being taken seriously.
Right, yeah.
Is there any way to mitigate that? Because I haven't come up with a solution in my life.
I guess what I let people know is that if I'm here as a professional working for you, I will be a professional working for you. And I've set my environment up so that I feel confident in that. But if they see me in the community, it's not going to change the fact that I might be having a really hard time at the grocery store because I can't find bacon. It's not with the sausage, just so you know.
No, it is not. They don't put it in the same place.
I don't understand. And it's not with the rest of the meat, like turkey and ham.
It is kind of strange.
It was just one struggle. One real-life example of how the world is hard. And I didn't even want bacon. I was just doing a favor for my little brother. I don't care about bacon.
Oh, that's good. That's kind of cathartic. I can understand so much with that. It just feels like it. I don't know. When I watch how people interact with you, I sometimes wonder how you're able to maintain composure, because I don't see you taking them to task. I don't see you bringing up certain things which they might be offended by, which they shouldn't be, but they get offended anyway.
Yeah.
How do you do that without running out of spoons?
Well, I limit my interaction with certain people at certain times. I think one big thing I do is I try to assume that people have good intentions, and then I have to look really hard and I find that common ground and say, oh yeah, I can empathize with that, or that's what I want too, is I want these kids to be able to communicate better. No, I don't think we should do it by telling them only happy is an option for how you feel. But I'm glad that you have, you want your kid to be able to communicate their feelings, and you start with that basic, and then I try to let them know how I feel, but also validate where they are. I've had a lot of training, being a music therapy major, you have to look for the good sometimes, and I don't know, I think I call it off when I'm not talking to the people that I'm talking about. I'll tell people, you have to pick your battles. You could make a battle about, one of the most common examples is language, autism, autistic versus having autism. We could have a lot of discussion about that. I could talk about that for you we could talk about that for a long time. And I could tell you to read the book No Pity by Joe Shapiro, and you might have a better understanding of why both are important to the history of the disability rights movement. But that's not the most beneficial conversation for you and I right now if we need to be talking about how this legislation is going to help fund this or that. And so you just kind of have to look at what's going to be most beneficial right now for this person.
Was that something that you learned and adapted over time? Or was it something that you just picked up through other methods?
It wasn't something I picked up. I was explicitly taught a lot of stuff. And I was very lucky that my mom she wrote down for me once, conversation should be a win-win. Both parties have to take something away from it that's good in order for them to be successful. And so that's something I think about a lot in conversation. And how can I be successful in that I share something important to me with them? And how can I facilitate them being successful by listening and letting them know I hear them too? It's easier said than done.
I would definitely agree. Some people you feel like you can't win when you talk to them.
Yes.
I have one last question. In regards to autistic women, what is one thing that you would absolutely like to see change in the next 5 years in regards to how autistic women are viewed or treated?
It would be nice to be able to go to an event for autistic people and not feel like that you're going to have to deal with people saying, do you want to go on a date? Do you want to be my girlfriend? I don't know if that's because I'm a medium young adult or because I'm an autistic woman or what, but I feel like that's if I go to an autism-specific socialization event, that's a huge component of it. And it's not that the people in charge are facilitating it to be that way. It just always is. So that's one thing.
Respecting your autonomy, respecting that decision.
Yeah, or you know what? Maybe I don't ever want a boyfriend. What if I want a girlfriend? Which I don't. But
I mean,
some people
honestly, I don't care either way.
Yeah.
The only reason I brought it up is because it's happened. I've seen it happen, and it feels so filthy when I see it happen, because they don't get to know you over a long period of time. There's no, developing that kind of relationship. It's just almost a direct, do you want to be my girlfriend or do you want to be my boyfriend? And that to me just, it doesn't, I can see, yeah. I have a lot I could say on this topic, but I'm trying to kind of put all my words in alignment here. But no, I think that is definitely something that should be respected, and it points to factors in the way gender is viewed.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I'm like, I don't care. Whoever you want to date, if you want to date at all, if you don't want to date, fine. It's like any direction on that, that's totally fine, because I didn't used to always be that way, but I've talked to others who have varying sexual orientations,
mm-hmm.
including asexuality, and so it's been a journey, but at this point I can totally understand.
And I'd like to think that people would be more okay with the answer of no, I don't want to date at all.
Do they not respond well to this?
No, people tend to go on and assume that it means I don't want to date them, even if I say explicitly I'm just not interested in dating.
So they take it very personally and do not take your word for it.
Yes. But can I add more to my answer?
Absolutely.
Because this was a later question. So thinking a little bit longer about this, I would really like to see improved mental health services, and I would like to see, or at least know, that there are counselors trained to support autistic women, or even just autistic adults. That would be a great change. I tried to see a counselor a year or two ago, and eventually my friends told me to stop going. After I expressed my frustrations that she kept calling me high functioning when I asked her not to. And she kept telling me I was an inspiration when I asked her not to.
That doesn't seem like a good counselor, because they look at you as though you're already finished, that nothing's wrong with you.
Yeah.
I mean, not by anything's wrong, but I'm saying not addressing symptoms that you're dealing with.
Right. And so I wish there was a way to find good, supportive counselors that are comfortable with neurodiverse women and individuals. That's 5 years out, that would be incredible. I think that'd be such a game changer for our community.
That definitely would. Well, thank you for joining me today. I definitely appreciate it. I think this was very beneficial, and I'm glad that I had you on today. So thank you so much. I'm Leo Jones, and this has been Neurologic. Neurologic is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. To view a copy of this license, visit creativecommons.org/licenses/by-nc-nd/4.0 or send the letter to Creative Commons, P.O. Box 1866, Mountain View, California 94042, USA. Neurologic uses the song Furious Freak, created by Kevin MacLeod, for its intro and outro music. Visit him at incompetech.com. Furious Freak is licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license, creativecommons.org/licenses/by/3.0. You can reach Leo Jones and Neurologic by email at neurologicpodcast@gmail.com.